Awesome. We finally got a hold of you. You're so busy, obviously, because you're the chair of Y20. What does that mean? If you're the chair of Y20, um, yeah, what does it mean? Were you the one who had to, decide who the delegates are, or is there a whole process that you design? What does it mean to be a chair of the Y20?
Yeah, look, it's just around strategic overview, strategic leadership, and oversight of all the components that exist within Y20 South Africa, such as the policy development, which is led by the Sherpa, such as logistics, which is led by the core secretariat, and of course some of the social events that are we're working with the province as well as the city of Ekurhuleni. But what it means really is for myself as the chair to provide that direction. Um, there is a delegation process that went on. So regarding the member states, what we do, we send them in an invitation. They select their own delegation and they provide names to us. This year, our delegation is a composition of six, five for all the five tracks, as well as the Sherpa, who also plays the role of a head of delegation. We did that simply because in some of the previous Y20s, especially between in the last 5, 7 years, the HOD, rather the delegate, would play two roles as a delegate and as a head of delegation. And that diluted some of the decision making processes because you sit in a track and you engage and you discuss, and perhaps you might even agree. But when you get to the heads of delegations, you also have a different role and you do a different discussion. So it's like pretty much more of a player and a referee. So from in our presidency, we wanted to separate the two, and I think it helped. Although it came with challenges, particularly the biggest challenge was resistance to change, because people are used to this process and they've been doing it for 4 or 5 years, and now changing that process has been resistance. But we do have a composition of six per delegation. We've also invited what we call the guest countries. So South Africa has invited around about 12, 13 guest countries to their presidency.
And is this the first time this is happening?
This is the first time that it's happening. So each country or each presidency do what we call an outreach, and they invite certain countries to their presidency. And those are what we call the friends of the chair. So we also have the friends of the chair in this case. What we also did out of those 15, 13 actually, we realized that only two of them are from the continent.
Wow.
So what we wanted to do is to have a much more representation of the continent. So we've done open it up and added additional 5 countries that are in the continent. So we have around about 18 member countries. Guest countries that are friends of the church that we've. And a similar process applies. We send the invitations to the countries and they send us the delegation. When it comes to South African context, what we did was an open process. So there was an open call, there was an application process, and in that application process, we received just over 700 applications. From those 700 applications, we only needed 5.
Sure.
So, as part of the application process, you'd have to answer, talk about your experience, particularly in the area, the thematic track that you are applying for, and then, of course, your experience in multilateralism, and you had to do a video. And then after the selection, you had to go for an interview. So we conducted interview, a short list of about 30. And from a short list of about 30, there was a short list of 15 recommended to the leadership, including myself and the Sherpa, to make final determination. And that's how we were able to achieve to a delegation of South Africa at the 5.
Sure. And with Y20 coming to South Africa, or G20 rather, what's the significance of that? Because I think young people don't really, we don't really understand why this is such a significant thing for our country.
Yeah, look, when you are presiding over a multilateral platform or block, because this is not an institution, and that is why there's no secretariat. It operates on a Sherpa model.
Yes.
You are you have the influence on determining the agenda, and that is what is important, because you would know that what is important to global south might not be important to the global north. We know on the issues of climate and energy transition, there's a lot of discussions and disparities between the global south and global north. But as a presidency and you're presiding over this platform, you're then given an opportunity to decide on the agenda, and you lay out the priorities. Anything that is not part of the priorities cannot be discussed.
Yes.
So it's like getting into a meeting and you have put an agenda, and there's no any other business that people can now put in their stuff.
Yes.
But also, I also want to say the agenda is also not determined unilaterally. So you also have engagements with, as the presiding officer, with other member states, particularly to align. For example, our presidency is the last in terms of the global south rotation. And you would also want to align with Indonesia,
Yes.
Brazil, India's chair, and so forth and so on. So that process, takes part in the background. But also, what is important is that there is a significant number of young people that would be able to participate and create awareness of these multilateral platforms that are making decisions on behalf of the global youth. And I'll give you an example. So, for the past 14 years, we were not hosting. We could only send between, depending on the number of countries' requirements. Some did 2, some did 5, some did 6. We could only send that particular delegation. For example, in Argentina, 2018, when I was heading up the South African delegation, Argentina had done only 2 per member state. So we could only send 2 people to Argentina. Whereas when it's sitting here, this process, and because people will look at it from a summit perspective, but it has been a process, and it's going to continue post summit to be a process which will lead up to the G20 Social Summit. When this process has affected at least more than 5,000 people in South Africa,
Sure.
compared to when we were not hosting it, and it would only be
Yes.
2-3 people that would actually be part of the process.
Yes.
And I think the last thing is, for example, and now coming back to Y20, we had to set out our priorities. But also our priorities speaks to what we call the high-level deliverables of South African priorities. But also, we had to also set up our high-level deliverables, because we do understand that Y20 has been in existence for now 15 years. However, there's no continuity. The tracker is not working quite well there. There's no implementation of
Yes.
the recommendations. It's just been a talk show. And look, I think I want to make it clear that I do not blame anyone.
Okay.
I'm also part of the problem.
Yes.
I participated in Y20 all the way back in 2012. I've been involved. And I represented South Africa as a head of delegation in 2018 in Argentina. But we've always been talk show. And you look at it, also just to say, it's not only in Y20, it's BRICS, UN, AU, youth are not given, vital space to make decisions. Always, we give youth space to talk, and then it ends there. So that is why I call it a talk show. So what we are saying is, we're not blaming people that have been there, even myself, including myself. But what we're saying is that we then need to regroup and see how can we improve.
Yes.
Every year you determine an improvement plan, and I think our improvement plan, we envision it long term. We need to have the Y20 council, which will then be empowered to
So it will be
effectively,
a permanent council.
yes,
Okay.
which will effectively then carry out the continuity of the Y20 legacy.
Track
And then
everything.
secondly, it will be to ensure, to say, because we always give these communique recommendations, but no one follows through. How many have we achieved? How many has any of the government of the G20? So it will be to follow through and track and do monitoring and evaluation. But last is it will be to ensure that there's advocacy and lobbying process at the domestic level in each of the member states on the implementation of Y20 recommendations.
Okay, so it seems like all the fear that the young people have been having about things not happening, it seems like you're on top of that. Okay, you can't solve it alone, but it seems like Y20 is now thinking about it, how we will solve this, how we will track it, and I think that's very inspiring. You kept on mentioning that this is the last presidency in the global south. What's the impact of that? Firstly, what does that mean? Okay, for young people to understand, and also what's the downside of that? Yes.
Yeah, look, I think what it means, as you know, globally we've got two contemporary um, geographic regions,
Yes.
the global south and global north, right? And global south are more of the advanced developed countries, and global south are in between developing and underdeveloped. Well, so the priority of a developed nation and that of underdeveloped nations would be different. So the ones that sets an agenda will set an agenda based on their priorities. A classical example is, again, on the use of, just energy transition. Um, Global South have already industrialized, but you cannot industrialize. I'm talking about the underdeveloped and the developing without obviously polluting the environment to some level of extent. But we're not saying no, just have
Yeah.
an open door. But
Yeah.
what we're saying is that afford underdeveloped and the developing countries the opportunity to also be at a level where they are able to when you talk about just energy transition the targets, but you are not looking at the livelihoods of the people that are going to be affected by the closure of the biggest companies such as Eskom,
Yeah.
the biggest companies such as your Shell, Total, and stuff. So you have to look at all of those components. So the priorities of these two uh, groups are not
Are
the
not
same.
aligned.
So
Yeah.
basically, what is happening is that the priorities that will be set on the table, which everyone would have to then follow through, because then the presiding officer might not necessarily be the priorities or at the advantage of the underdeveloped and the developing nations. So that's basically what it means when we say we actually need to ensure that because we are the last in the rotation,
We cover
to
a
ensure
lot.
that we cover
Yeah.
a lot and we put systems in place that is not just one stop and then it's done, we will see it in 20 years. That is even when the priorities are set by the coming nations, we still have measures that would ensure continuity of some of the issues that, because these issues that we're discussing are not going to be implemented this year.
Yeah.
So the
It's gonna take
implementation would
years.
have to take some time from next year or 2 years to come. So by that time, we need to ensure that at least there's mechanism and processes in place. And one of them is the establishment for us as Youth 20 is the establishment of the Youth Council. But I must also note that there's a lot of pushback from other member states,
Oh.
and the discussions are still going. There's negotiations. We've had the first meeting, in-person meeting with the heads of delegations yesterday on other various issues which were resolved, which was, and I'm sitting here optimistic. I've also been engaging on bilateral with heads of delegation of various countries to see where there are red lines and conversions, how do we find each other and where do we find each other. So we'll continue to negotiate until we reach this consensus of the establishment of the Youth Council.
Oh, awesome. I think we are proud of all the work that your team has been doing. And I think the summit is going well. But I also think the presidency has been managed very well. It's been transparent this time around. We understand what's happening. There's also been working groups.
Yeah.
So basically, there's been normal people who have just been adding their voice into the decisions that have been made in the room. And I think we appreciate that opportunity to also add, our thoughts. So how can the youth keep tabs of what's happening? So going forward, all these things you're going to do, the council you're going to form, how can they get the updates, and how can they stay plugged in?
Yeah, no, thank you. The council we're going to form is not yet decided.
I know, but we are optimistic.
And maybe I need to mention this. When I was in Argentina, South Africa raised this motion to establish the council, but it did not enjoy absolute majority.
Shucks. And this is 2018.
This is 2018, and we packed it, and we're coming back to it today. And I want to say, even if it does not find expression and it's not voted for, we would still continue lobbying for it in the next presidencies where the chairship might be our friends. I mean, we know that the United States will be taking the presiding role from 1 December this year. And I must also mention that we also have a full delegation of the United States here in South Africa.
That's good to know. That's good to know. We were a bit worried that they would not come.
Yeah, so they are here. In actual fact, we have the entire G20 member states, including the African Union, in attendance. As I speak to you, they are in negotiation rooms, and they are negotiating. So that's good. But how do you now follow up? So we have what we call the post-summit engagement, because our approach, and that's what we've been saying, the summit is a start for us. And then it will end at the G20 Social Summit. So we've been engaging with a number of organizations, SAYA, Oxfam, and others, to take G20 to the people. And as part of that, our process would be to ensure that we take Y20 to the people. So whatever outcomes that comes up here, we're going to go to the people, to young people in communities, rural areas, to say, what do you think? Is this your priorities? Because the G20 social, we are able to now give in a fresh perspective on the basis of what has been added by young people, but also through our social medias. We are on social medias, all platforms. You should engage with our working groups. We've got over more than 2,000 participants in the working groups that cuts across the nation and continent and the global south.
Look, thank you for your time. Us as Behind the Industry podcast, we're also putting our hand up to take Y20 to the people.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.